The first decade of the 20th century must have been an exciting time to be alive. Americans were feeling proud about the recent victory in the war with Spain and the acquisition of Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. And the island paradise of Hawaii had been annexed in 1898. Rapid innovation was transforming the horseless carriage from a rich man's expensive toy to a useful commodity for the middle class. The first transatlantic radio transmission would be made in 1901, and two brothers from Ohio would build the world's first flying machine in 1903. Telephone and electric service was beginning to spread from the large cities to more rural areas like Roseland and Rockaway Neck. People must have wondered what other amazing inventions might come next. Popular books of the first decade included The Call of the Wild, The Hound of the Baskervilles, and The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Popular music included Shine on Harvest Moon, In the Good Old Summertime, and Scott Joplin's The Entertainer. If you were fortunate enough to own a gramophone, you could play some of your favorite music at home. Of course, not all the news was good. In September of 1901, the nation was shocked to learn that President William McKinley had been shot while visiting a World's Fair in Buffalo, New York. Doctors were hopeful the president might pull through, but McKinley died 8 days later from an infection introduced by the bullet that remained in his abdomen. Vice President Theodore Roosevelt was sworn in as president within hours. McKinley's body laid in state in the Capitol Rotunda while 100,000 people filed by his open casket. He was then taken to his hometown, Canton, Ohio, for burial. Here in New Jersey, the Roseland column of the Caldwell News had this report.
The death of President McKinley threw a gloom over this village. Nearly every house displayed some emblem of mourning, and on Thursday, all places of business were closed. A Union memorial service was held on Thursday afternoon in the Presbyterian Church at 3 o'clock. A large congregation was present.
The new president was already well known to the public, famous for leading a cavalry charge up Cuba's San Juan Hill in the war with Spain. Roosevelt would serve as president for most of the decade. His most noteworthy accomplishment was the takeover and stewardship of building the Panama Canal. The canal's opening in 1914 would seal America's reputation as a global power, with dominance over two oceans. Roosevelt was also admired for his trust-busting actions, reining in railroads and other companies whose unfair business practices allowed them to dictate rates. Even today, Teddy Roosevelt is considered to be one of the most popular presidents of all time. Another tragic event of the first decade was the San Francisco earthquake in April of 1906. 3,000 people died, and as many as 300,000 were left homeless. This documentary film, made by the Thomas Edison Studios and restored using today's AI techniques, shows the view up busy Market Street not long before the quake hit. The ferry terminal building at Market Street's end can be seen through the fog. The Edison team went back after the earthquake to film the same area after the tragedy. New Jersey people joined with others from all over the country to send food and supplies to feed and shelter the people of San Francisco. Now that we have a little historical context, let's take a look at what was happening in the lives of our ancestors during this decade. We'll start with the Rockaway Neck ancestors and then move on to our ancestors in Roseland. On January 15th of 1900, residents of Pine Brook and nearby Rockaway Neck were invited to an event at the local Methodist church. Attendees got a chance to see the invention Thomas Edison called the kinetoscope, basically a cabinet with a peephole that when a coin was inserted would let a person view a short moving picture. Since Chester and Sophronia's family lived so near the church, it's likely that at least some of them joined in the fun. The Caldwell News reported that the large crowd greatly enjoyed the program, and half of the $25 raised was donated to the church. Chester and Sophronia had just recently celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary. Their 3 eldest children had already married at this point and moved away from Rockaway Neck. Edith lived in Florham Park with husband George Hopping and young daughters Grace and Murdy. Grace lived in Bloomfield with husband Eb Griffith and baby daughter Grace. Eliza also lived in Bloomfield with her husband Herb Griffith and their 1-year-old son Earl. In 1902, Chester and Sophronia's 4th child, Ada, married George Van Riper. The couple moved to Wayne Township of Passaic County, where George worked as a blacksmith for the Erie Railroad. By 1910, these 4 daughters would give Chester and Sophronia 15 grandchildren. And we know that they all came home to Rockaway Neck for visits because the newspapers often mentioned these homecomings. During this decade, all 3 of the Leonard boys left home to start careers. In 1900, John Leonard was already living, at least part-time, with his sister Eliza in Bloomfield, and working as an apprentice carpenter to her husband Herb Griffith. John's identical twin, Raymond Chester Leonard, went by his middle name, Chester, and was called Chess by friends and family. By the time of the 1905 state census, all 3 Leonard brothers were living with Eliza and Herb. John was by then a journeyman carpenter, while Chess and Russell were working as masons. Interestingly, all 3 brothers were also counted in the 1905 census with their parents in Rockaway Neck. They were probably moving back and forth during this period, staying with Eliza when they had work in Bloomfield, and returning to Rockaway Neck when their schedules permitted. This commute was becoming easier during this period as the new Bloomfield Avenue electric trolley between Caldwell and Newark was nearing completion. Trolley travel, however, was not without perils. In 1904, John was thrown from a trolley in Verona when another trolley rammed them from behind as they descended the mountain. Fortunately, he was not seriously hurt. We found a few other mentions of the Rockaway Neck Leonard boys in the Caldwell News during this period. The article on the left here describes a camping trip that John Leonard and some friends made to Greenwood Lake. The article on the right reports that John was planning a hunting trip to Alamuchee Township in Warren County. And another article reported that John and Chess were given a party by their parents on the occasion of their 21st birthdays. By 1900, baseball was firmly established as the national pastime. New York City had 2 professional teams, and many local communities sported their own amateur teams. One of the smaller clubs in this area was the Pine Brook Field Club, whose team captain was John Leonard, circled here. John's twin, Chess Leonard, also played for the team and is circled here. Stories about John's athletic ability have been passed down to us over the generations. This newspaper article reports a 12-3 drubbing Pine Brook gave the Verona Athletic Club in 1905. The box score shows that first baseman John Leonard had 3 hits and scored 3 of the team's 12 runs. The player listed just below John is his cousin, Nelson Leonard, son of John's uncle, Sam Leonard. In February of 1905, a dance was held in Caldwell as a fundraiser for the Pinebrook team. All the Leonard boys and their cousin Nelson attended. The dance was probably organized by Russell, who was known to do that on various occasions. We were curious about the venue for the dance, which was described as the new Leonard Building. Further research revealed this Bloomfield Avenue building was owned by Caldwell resident Caleb Leonard. As this chart shows, Caleb was a second cousin to John and Chess Leonard and to my father, Ralph Leonard. The basement of the building offered a clubroom that included a bowling alley. The ground floor supported 3 stores, one of which was probably Caleb's plumbing business, and Caleb's family lived on the second floor. Sometime in the latter half of 1906, John and Chess Leonard traveled west to California. San Francisco was still dealing with the devastation left by the April earthquake, and newspaper articles like this one spoke of high-paying jobs there, especially for young men in the trades. What we know about this trip can be gleaned from letters that John wrote to his parents between December of 1906 and March of 1907. What follows are excerpts from these letters.
Dear Mother, I thought that I would drop you a few lines and tell you that I went to work today. The job will only last for 2 or 3 weeks. They say that there's a good job down on Market Street, trimming. If I can get it, I will stay here. It will last about 5 months at $6 a day. I'm getting $5 now outside. I hope I can get that job. It is all oak. If I do, I will stay here next summer till it's finished. I think Chess will come home when he's out of a job. I was thinking when I was to work today with my sleeves rolled up that I bet they weren't rolled up in Jersey. How is Uncle? I suppose that he is froze to death. Hoping to find you all well, John.
The uncle that John refers to here is his great-uncle Francis Watson Leonard, brother of John's grandfather, Nelson Leonard. Watson was 67 years old at the time and living with Chester and Sophronia's family, who all called him Uncle Wat. He was still working as a carpenter, and it's clear John thought he was probably working outside in the cold New Jersey winter. The next letter, which John addressed to his father, came about a month later.
Dear Papa, I received your letter and was glad to hear from you and that you are all well. You say that it is quite cold. Well, I think that it will be a cold March. Well, we are all well and having a good time and expect to see some of the country before we come back. I don't know just when we will come back. They say there is going to be an awful strike here in the spring. There will be a fierce time when they go out. I will go somewhere else when they go out. They are crazy over it now. There will be lots of men killed, so they say. There are some unions that don't pull together, and they are going to work. And others say that if they work, they will knock them off of the building with bricks. Well, I don't think I will stay here in it. I think too much of my block to have it knocked off with bricks. I will go to Los Angeles and stay there a while, and then we'll go on. Well, Pa, I must close, hoping to find you all well. John Leonard.
The strike John spoke of would begin in May, starting with the streetcar drivers and then spreading to other unions. Over the next year, strike violence would leave 31 dead and thousands injured. John sent his next letter on January 30th.
Dear Mother, I received your letter and was glad to hear from you. I have been laid off for 2 or 3 days until the lumber gets here. I made 3 weeks' pay inside and saved $40 of it. I don't go around much. I haven't spent $2 foolishly yet, and I don't expect to. I told you about the cheap rates on the railroad, so I think that if I can get a ticket soon, it will save me $15 or $20. The reason I asked you for the money is I thought I might not have enough money by that time. When I get the money, I will send it back to you, or give it to you in the spring, as I know you need it to buy seeds with. Well, I don't think that we are sorry that we came out here. We are having a good time and don't have to freeze to death. I don't think that I will be back in April. The 1st of March or the middle of April, I will start for some other place and try it there. I think I'll go to Santa Cruz. They say there's lots of work there. Chess is working. I guess that he's inside. Russ done very good on his last dance, didn't he? They must have had a good time. Well, I must close. Tell Uncle Watt that I sent him a letter 2 weeks ago. Maybe it got lost. John.
The last of John's letters that we have was addressed to his mother on February 23rd.
Dear Mother, I got a letter from Sister Grace today, the only one I got. I usually get 4 or 5 on Saturday. I am getting more money now, and this job will last until I want to go to Los Angeles. Tell Estelle that I will write to her tomorrow, as I have got to go to supper before long. I hear that Russ only made his expenses on the last dance. He must be rushing things. I hear that Uncle Sam is in the hospital with a cut hand. That's too bad. I hope he gets along with it all right. Well, Chess is getting a lot of letters from Lydia, one almost every day. I think he will get married in the spring, don't you? Well, I can't think of anything else, so I will close. Best love to Pa. John.
The Uncle Sam John mentioned in this letter was his father's younger brother. Sam, his wife Sally, and their 5 children lived nearby in Montville Township. The eldest of Sam and Sally's kids, Nelson, who was named after his grandfather, was about the same age as his cousins John and Chess, and played baseball with them on the Pine Brook team. We don't know how long John stayed out west. He often talked of staying as long as he could find work, but his letters made clear that work there was often not steady, and living in a boarding house was probably challenging. John was right about Chess, who was home by May 18th when he married Lydia. Lydia, whose full name was Lyda Day Hopping, and Chess settled in Bloomfield, about a mile from Eliza and Herb. In 1908, they welcomed Gladys, the first of 4 children that would include twin boys. That same year, Chess and Russell started their own construction firm. This ad for the Leonard Brothers Company appeared in the 1910 Bloomfield City Directory. In that same directory, we saw this ad for Herb Griffith's business. In 1901, 11-year-old Estelle Leonard, the youngest of Chester and Sophronia's children, was mentioned in the newspaper as one of the students with a perfect school attendance record for the month of February. In 1905, Estelle served as the flower girl for the wedding of Mamie Van Winkle, who lived just down the road. We don't know how far Estelle may have gone beyond grammar school. If she went to high school, it would have been in Boonton. One other mention of Estelle was in 1909, when she was 19 and hosted a party at home for 2 friends visiting from Stanhope. One more interesting story about the Rockaway Neck Leonards during this decade is that in 1905, Chester and Sophronia bought a small plot of land along Bloomfield Avenue, adjacent to their 16-acre farm. The deed recorded in the Morris County Courthouse says they paid $175 for it. They held this property for only 3 years, selling it in 1908 to the Hanover Township Board of Education. The sales price wasn't revealed in the deed, but it's likely they made a good profit on the investment. By 1909, a 2-room schoolhouse was built here, and it still stands today. It served as a primary school for Rockaway Neck kids for many decades, before being converted to a maintenance depot for what today is the Parsippany-Troy Hills School District. We think this photo was taken in Rockaway Neck about 1910. Posing here are Chester and Sophronia and 3 of their kids, John, Russell, and Estelle. And we think daughter Eliza was also there because standing at the far left is her husband, Herb Griffith. Eliza was probably taking this photo using one of those popular and inexpensive Kodak Brownie cameras. Of course, the original photo was black and white, but we have colorized it here. Since John and Russell were living with Eliza and Herb at that time, they had probably all come together from Bloomfield on the trolley. Estelle Leonard would have been about 20 at this time and was still living at home with her parents. She seems to be the only one who has decided it might be okay to smile for the camera, a decidedly modern thing to do. The young lady seated at right was identified as a friend. It's possible that this is May Byrne, the young woman Russell Leonard will marry in 1915.